Hey everyone, it's Arshawn. Welcome to another edition of Journey to CEO. We welcome those of you that are tuning in live. And of course, we know some of you are watching it on video replay as well, which is always an option at the Journey to CEO YouTube channel. Just go over there, subscribe, ring the bell. We have a whole collection of past episodes to help you on that journey from entrepreneur to CEO, to help you go from being that person with an idea, starting a business, to being an actual CEO that's running an enterprise that can run without you. A lot of steps along the way. And today, got Dr. Ann Gaddy back with me, co-author of our book on redirection. And it's part of the Journey to CEO, Entrepreneur CEO book series. And you'll be seeing more books coming out from that here in the near future. But today we want to talk about talent management and managing your talent. This is an issue for a lot of businesses right now, Dr. Ann. You got to get people to come to work. And I know depending on what market you're in, what industry you're in, that's a challenge to get employees through the door, quality employees who can do the work. And then once they get there, you of course want them to stay. You don't want them to get recruited away by your competitors, and you want them to grow and hopefully grow with your organization. And that requires a lot of strategy. Probably not as much as people have thought about here in these last several years, because there wasn't as much of an issue. It's becoming a real pressing issue now to have great employee retention.
Well, we know talent is a key asset for any business. And so now it becomes imperative that as you're relaunching in many cases, or maybe pivoting, reorganizing your business, taking it in a different trajectory, that you really look at who you have working, and are they in the right positions? Do they have the right skill sets? So there really are, this is a time I say you review your job descriptions just to see that you have the right people hired. And as you're hiring, you're going to have to look at incentives more, I think, just to make certain that this is a workplace where people want to work and they believe in your purpose. So it does become a little more strategic, and there are some trade-offs you may have to make, maybe paying a little more, maybe giving flex time, maybe, seeing what the employees need. But it is a very, very challenging time to get employees to come back to work in many instances.
Yeah, that knee jerk, or that quick reaction that we hear from a lot of people is just pay people more, right? So I mean, I was reading a thread the other day, and that was the answer, right? Was business was having retention issues, and a lot of people were commenting, "Well, just pay people more, just pay people more, just pay people more." But there's an element beyond that, right? I mean, people are looking at more than just weighing their paycheck. I mean, obviously, pay is part of the equation for almost every employee you're going to hire, but a lot of employees are looking beyond that. And I think you were talking about a mix right there, Dr. Ann. I mean, to mix together pay, but other quality of life issues plus development issues, and just really look at it as a whole package.
Yeah, I do think that with the COVID situation, people were staying at home. They were used to a different environment, work environment. And so there was more of a blending of work and personal lives. So I think there's still is the concern that we continue to blend those two elements, and we're not making them so distinct. And in that way, you really do have to look at flexibility. You may also need to think about, if they're caring for children, older adults, who do they need to take care of and support in their circle. But aside from the flexibility and maybe additional time off for certain things, obviously FMLA kicks in. There are some things that are in place now due to COVID, as far as people being able to take extra time off, or that they've maybe left the workforce or your employment, but they're still on your COBRA. I think that the other thing, aside from just the flexibility and maybe reorienting what their job is based on your changing trajectory, I think you need to look at professional development more seriously if you're concerned about retention. And that is looking at what is the next step for this employee. What is it that you would like that employee to learn?
Yep.
So, that they can grow with you in the organization. And that gives them a sense of fulfillment too. So as you're doing any kind of performance review, then I also say, oh yes, here are things we want you to improve, but here are ways for you to grow.
Yeah, and I think that's a huge thing. There's a saying floating around. You'll probably find it at different articles, find on the internet from time to time. But it's a conversation between the CFO and the CEO, and the CFO says, can we afford? If we train all our people, what if they leave? And the CEO says, well, what if we don't train our people and they stay? And it kind of raises that issue of, it's an alignment, right? I mean, if you're going to provide resources and opportunity for your employees to grow, and you've got the kind of employees that are going to take those opportunities, you're building the right culture and the right organization, right? Everybody's improving and striving for growth, versus the companies that don't invest in that. Then you kind of have either one of two things. You have people coming and going because they can't grow. The people that you would want to keep because they want to grow into higher positions and higher roles, they're leaving. And the people that are just happy to collect a paycheck and they don't want to really challenge themselves, they're sticking around, right? So it does look expensive to pay for training and development and to provide time and resources for it. But if you don't, you can create a terrible culture that can have a huge cost.
But the other thing to consider is, and we talk about this in Journey to CEO, that you're eventually, as the business owner, you're going to exit, and to make certain that you have grown somebody who can replace you. As people grow and retire out of the business or what have you, who do you have to step in? That becomes important as well. And that's another reason why I do firmly believe that professional development is an integral part of your talent management.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to be said for, growing internally and to fill positions internally. And I think that's part of what good strategic talent management does, is it gives you that bench where people can replace you, they can replace other employees, they can grow in new positions, you can expand the company and move people into higher roles. I'm thinking maybe a retail establishment, right? Maybe you have a great base of employees at one of your stores. You could open another store, within reasonable distance from it. You could move some of your staff into the new store so they could take higher level positions, right? The assistant manager could become the manager.
Right.
But you can only do that type of move if you've been developing your people, because if you've had them be stagnant and not grow into higher abilities, they're not going to be ready to make those kind of moves.
Correct. I think that that's a really good point, that it is important that you have a deep bench, and that as things change, I mean, as the owner, you're always looking out and seeing what the marketplace is doing and how it is changing and shifting. So there's always a need to update and upgrade the type of training you do with your employees, because technology is changing rapidly, which we talk about in our book, Journey to CEO. But I just think that, if you're looking outward and as the business owner or leader or what have you, you need people behind you that are doing the work and can drive for results, while you are, making certain that the vision still seems aligned with what the current marketplace needs.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's kind of the higher vision of what you should be doing as a CEO, right? We talk about Journey to CEO. As CEO, in an ideal world, you're looking more strategic, and is the organization got the right culture? Are we pointing in the right direction? What opportunities are we capturing next? While maybe people on your team are using a structure you've built to allow themselves to develop themselves professionally into higher roles.
Right. And we've talked a lot about the agile organization and having the correct teams in place. Well, therefore, you have to grow those teams. They don't happen overnight. But again, you've got to trust those teams, and to trust them, you've got to know that they have the skill sets you need to get the work done. And I think that with the trust and And with the respect, you're liable to see a happier workforce, and they're going to stick around.
Yeah, and that's going to give you a competitive advantage, right? I mean, we talked about wages, and that's been something that's been talked a lot about in the popular press. Who's paying more, and good motivated employees. Maybe they're on a long-term development plan that are been around. They know their coworkers. They're probably not going to jump for $1 an hour if they've been there for a while, right? So while I'm not saying you use strategic talent management as a strategy to depress wages, it points to a broader compensation package beyond just the amount of money in your paycheck, which could largely be a race to the bottom, right? If everybody's just fighting to give the biggest paycheck, you could end up in a real, you could lose a lot of employees real quick because somebody offers an extra dollar or two.
Right. No, I think employees right now are looking for more than just the salary. They want authentic leadership. They want flexibility. They want respect. They want to have ownership in what is being done, that they can feel a part of that whole organizational process.
Yeah. And you got to say, too, the good employees, they're going to think about their long-term compensation program, right? Not just how much is in the paycheck this week or what am I getting this week, but, can I be a store manager in 3 to 5 years? Can I be, the head of the office? Could I run a division of the company? These are what your good employees are probably aspiring to, and it's going to motivate them to work harder if they feel like there's a realistic chance of them, moving up the ladder.
Right, so that you have opportunities for them. I think the other thing that I look at with strategic talent management is the leader's ability to network with others and know what's going on in the industry. So you start to see patterns, and you start to share notes and learn from one another as far as what is going on in their workplace, what's going on in your workplace, so that you can maybe even share resources in some ways. I mean, that's what we used to have conferences for, when there were live conferences.
Yes.
That we could send our employees out. I think most of the time now, though, we're finding it's a hybrid. There is some online learning and some in-person learning, but I think it's really going in that direction and on-the-job learning as well, which is why another component, aside from sort of pooling your resources and maybe having a joint conference, I think the other in-person element would be to have a mentoring program. And that would be helpful as well, because that keeps the mentor and the mentee sort of cross communicating and keeps a good pulse. You can hear a good pulse on how the business is doing, how the culture is developing.
Yeah, and it all points to some form of, internal and external coaching. And I know different organizations manage that differently, right? And sometimes it's a mentor relationship, sometimes it's built into a training schedule, sometimes it's built into actual coaches that work for the company, or sometimes coaches on the outside that are hired in employee by employee. I've seen all these different models, but as we move into this world that we're evolving into now, I mean, this is important. The good employees want to develop, right? They want to have a path forward. And you've got to provide them some resources to allow them to become what they want to be.
Yeah, that's why we're moving. HR is really, the human resource terminology is really shifting now to more talent management, because it is an asset. It needs to be handled in a strategic manner. And right from verifying the job descriptions, making sure you have the right workers in the right places, developing your teams, professional development. Those are all components that when you put together your strategy, strategy is made up of trade-offs. So you say yes to some things and no to other things. So it's very important that you know what are the best solutions for you to manage your teams, so that you do have retention, you do have history, and you do have opportunity for growth with those employees.
Yeah, and there's something to be said for that, right? I mean, to get the employees retained, get them in there, have the strategy. And it's no longer just an HR of compliance, right? And I think there were some companies, unfortunately, that kind of fell into that. And as a lawyer, I think a lot about compliance. Yes, there are boxes that need to be checked, governmental forms that need to be filed, et cetera, et cetera. But a good, team of future, a good, strategic talent department is going to be thinking of that beyond just let's not get in trouble with the government because we didn't have the right forms on file.
Well, and I think we're seeing more and more that the person involved with talent management is in the C-suite. They are not assistant managers, assistant directors. They are vice presidents. They are in the C-suite because they are a part of the overall strategy for the organization in growing the talent and managing that talent.
Absolutely. They need to have that ear, and it needs to be part of the overall culture, right? And we talk about culture. We talk about that in our redirection book. We talk about in the upcoming Journey to CEO book. And folks, if you haven't yet, make sure you get on our mailing list. I'll put a link for you guys here up in a minute. But make sure that you are thinking about how do you make sure this is part of your central culture, part of that central communication, right? You're talking to the marketing department, you're talking to the CFO about money, and you probably want your talent management person right there at the table too, talk about how the money, how the marketing plan, and how the team you're going to build are all intermixing together to get to your strategic goals.
Well, and the thing is that then you have a timeline for hiring. You also know what types of roles need to be added to your employee pool. And oftentimes, not oftentimes, but if you are retaining your employees, it is saving your company money than if you have to go out and constantly recruit and hire.
Yep.
So that's a big thing. And so from a financial standpoint, you are better off retaining than churning your employees.
Oh, absolutely. So that's kind of the financial CFO side of it, right? Well, that's why you need this talent management person talking to the CFO, because
exactly.
You don't think about this strategically. You don't implement a strategic plan for your employees, and then they turn over. And we've all seen the studies of what it costs for turnover. And there, folks, you'll see our Journey to CEO YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed to that yet, of course, make sure you do so. But then also you can see how to get onto our mailing list so you can get updates from us about our upcoming books and other things. So it's a holistic view of cost, I think, Dr. Ann, right? It's not just looking at what does an employee cost today, but what is our talent management going to cost over a period of time?
Right. And that's a long-term goal. I think if, we are working in more of an iterative process with our agile organizations, but even so, you can sort of project how many people you need to get the work done, what they need to be doing, what the quality is they need to be handling. All of those things are still tangible.
Yeah. Well, and you also want to think about, kind of that long-term trajectory, and as you were talking about that, I'm thinking if you're a large company, you can kind of play the law of large numbers, right? If you got 100 associates in your store, 10 of them are going to be assistant managers, 3 years from now or whatever.
Right.
If you run a smaller organization, I think you need to look at an individual by individual basis and kind of think about what is the career trajectory of this individual and how do we cater to it, right? How do we...
Well, and you ask them as well, what are their goals? What are they looking for? What do they need in their, in the time that they're working? And it may be that they start out part-time. It may be, they go empty nest and then they're ready to go full-time so they can take on more responsibility. I mean, there are all sorts of ways to be able to assist the employees' needs.
Yeah, there's a huge piece here, and I'm glad you doubled down on that with the conversation, right? To get that back and forth going with your talent and say, where are you headed, right? And some of them may say, I just want to be part-time forever. I just do this to make a little side money, or I like working in the store and I like seeing my neighbors come out to the shop, right? That's going to be a couple of your employees maybe. And then other ones are going to say, I want to run the place, or maybe one day I want to be a co-owner, or I want to,
Right.
open another division of this business in another city. I've seen all kind of different combinations with my clients over the years.
Sure.
But the key is to have the conversation and say, what do you want?
Right.
Your talent, you're important to us. We want to see how long we can work together and maximize it. What do you want?
And I think you have to be honest right from the get-go as you're recruiting. If what this person is looking for, you have to be honest in whether you can deliver that.
Yeah.
If they want to be a manager and that's not going to be in the cards, then you need to tell them up front. That's the thing I think, again, is so important with our conversations for future employees, is to be honest about what the opportunities are.
Yeah, and that goes all the way back to your culture. And yeah, I mean, I think the time to start bringing these issues out is in the hiring process, right?
Right.
About what that trajectory is. And maybe you have somebody that comes in for a role, right? I mean, there's nothing wrong with, depending on your company, depending on what you need. I've certainly seen people do this. Somebody's only going to be there for 2 or 3 years, right? They got another thing coming up in their life. They got some other objective, and you say, hey, come in and play a role for 2 or 3 years, and you go, we go, everybody's happy, everybody did their job, right? And that's possible, right? Not every employee has to be a lifer either.
No.
You probably want to maximize the number of those for efficiency purposes to keep your costs down over the long term. But sometimes you need a role filled. You have a hole, and so all of that can be assessed through conversation. So I think you're absolutely right, Dr. Ann. That's a critical piece that a lot of companies miss. It's just having that back and forth between the team and saying, what are we all trying to do?
Yeah.
Yeah. Huge piece there. So I always like to connect something practical for our viewers and listeners. So, what do we start doing now? I mean, what could we shift today if we want to make our organizations better for the future, Dr. Ann?
Well, the first thing I do is do an assessment and make sure you've got the right people in the right seats. Mm-hmm. And then with them, I would circle in and make sure that you know what their goals are and make certain that there's an alignment. But then I would, at least for the rest of this year, we're coming into the end of the second quarter. So for the rest of the year, I would just make sure, what is it we need to accomplish to set ourselves up for, out of COVID, and we're going to be, going into 2022. What is it that we want to accomplish, and how do we align our people to help us accomplish it? So it would be really just doing an assessment first, review the trajectory and goals, and then make certain everybody's in alignment with that. 3 steps.
Powerful message here, folks. Again, I'm going to pop that email, put that website address up there. Go over there if you haven't done so yet. Get on our email list. You'll get updates. You'll learn about upcoming recordings of this. You'll learn about our upcoming books. So jump on our website. But Dr. Ann, another informative session. I hope a lot of you take value in this. And of course, if you are subscribed to our email list, I want to remind you, you'll get emails out to you with updates and things, and you can reply back and talk to us about what topics you want covered, other things. You can also put that in the comments. So we're glad you're here. Thanks for those of you tuned in live. For those of you watching on recording, go check out some more videos, and we'll see you guys again soon. Great show, Dr. Ann. Thanks.
Thank you.